Giuliani, are you ready for Colonel Waldron?
Colonel Waldron is our first witness, and I'll ask him a few questions, and then he will make his own presentation, and then, of course, you're perfectly free to ask him any questions that you want. Colonel Waldron, did you have the opportunity to examine any of the Dominion machines that were used in this election?
Yes, sir. Our team looked at some machines and software up in Michigan.
So you know that Dominion machines were used in Maricopa County to count the vote.
Correct.
And they were also used in Michigan.
Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania.
And the machines that you observed, took a look at, were able to examine, were used in the Michigan vote?
Correct.
Now tell us a little about Dominion. Dominion is a company that makes voting machines and voting calculation machines?
That's correct. They've got full end-to-end election, equipment and software.
And the actual software in the Dominion machine, is that Dominion software or is it someone else's?
Dominion is more of a hybrid. Over the years, they've acquired other voting companies, Sequoia and Premier. Sequoia was spun off of SGO, and Premier was spun off of Diebold as a result of the antitrust lawsuit.
Sequoia is the company that was involved in the very serious miscalculation of the Chicago vote in 2007, wasn't it?
I believe that's correct, yes, sir.
And they were using Smartmatic software, right?
Correct. And the software, the licensing agreements are pretty well. It's a good spider chart for all of these companies. They all share a common DNA in the software code.
And that company, Smartmatic, their roots are in Venezuela, isn't that right?
Yes, sir. Hugo Chavez was one of the founders, and invested, I think, 28% ownership in the initial setup of the SGO election systems.
And they have been involved in several South American elections that were fixed, altered?
Argentina, Bolivia, Singapore, Venezuela, Italy, several.
And just to simplify things, and we can make this available to you, and we have several witnesses that go back to that period of time who were involved in the vote fixing, who have looked at the vote pattern in Arizona and elsewhere and said that the pattern matches the way in which Dominion and Smartmatic, companies like that, fix votes. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And well, let me ask you this other question. One of the former officials of the United States government, a gentleman named Chris Krebs, the former DHS official, shortly after the election, he made an announcement that many of these people refusing to take a look at any evidence are relying on. What did he say?
Mr. Krebs was the director of CISA at DHS, and he basically said that this election was the most secure in history.
The most what?
Most secure in
history.
The
most secure in history.
And partially that was because the states do an excellent job of validating voter rolls, and that this equipment is not connected to the internet. That was in his.
He said this equipment, which was largely Dominion and several others, is not connected to the internet. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, is Dominion on his council?
Dominion was on Mr. Krebs' Election Security Advisory Council.
And is there, and we'll get to it with the witness, is there substantial evidence, not only here in Arizona, but in other states like what we presented in Pennsylvania, that Dominion was in fact connected to the internet?
Are you referring to information other than the user's manual?
Well, let's go back to the user's manual. Tell them about the user's manual.
The Dominion Suite User's Manual is about 1.5 inches thick. My team went back to the user's manual and looked at all the instances where in the user's manual it tells operators to connect the Ethernet cords to the router, and it is the systems are connected to the internet.
And then what evidence do you have that there actually was connection to the internet?
Our teams looked at spider graphs of the Dominion network on election day and showed the increased web traffic, internet traffic on election day for Dominion servers.
So on election day, Dominion was communicating by internet,
Correct.
contrary to what Mr. Krebs said or thought.
That is correct.
And tell us now, how do they take us through how the vote can be modified, and then take us through what you saw in the machine in Michigan, where they did actually modify the vote.
So my background in the military, started off my career as an air cavalry officer, flying helicopters, counter reconnaissance. Moved later into information warfare as an information operations officer, running psychological operations, computer network operations, deception, operation security, and electronic warfare, special electronic warfare. And our team has been researching this specific issue since August of this year. We are working with another team that's been intently working on this voting machine manipulation for about 2 years when it became apparent in the Ted Cruz and Beto race in 2018, as well as the Kentucky governor's race with Matt Bevins. We saw significant anomalies in those races, and that's kind of the experience or our background working with this system. And I would tell you, as an unconventional warfare information operations, information warfare specialist, the American populace is facing an unconventional warfare scenario, and this is information warfare. The voting systems in the U.S. and Arizona, Dominion, and several of the other machines were built to be manipulated. And as the mayor said, they've been used in elections around the world with questionable results. And we believe that these same questionable results are present in this election. Again, my background as an information warfare officer is how to get in and corrupt these machines to conduct strategic influence operations. How do I get the enemy or a targeted population in a foreign country to think and act a certain way? These machines have multiple points of injection that are vulnerable, everywhere from the server level, where passwords, accesses are posted for the dark web for any hacker to get in and access them. And what they can do at the far right limit is download CSV files or like an Excel spreadsheet, change the columns, and re-upload them. And that can be done at the server level. At the operator level, if there's software, it can be corrupted. It can be manipulated with a device that is as small and as simple as a USB device, which these machines are booted up and run off of. So the little bit of history, and I can show you some charts on the DNA of these machines, but the common software goes back to SGO Smartmatic. As the mayor mentioned, they sold Sequoia voting systems to Dominion in 2010, and then Diebold spun off the Premier election system to Dominion as a result of the antitrust concerns. I believe that was also in 2010. So the bottom line is that these systems all have similar code and similar functions, and it's displayed in their operator's manual. So, I know it's kind of been, in the press, it's kind of been poo-pooed that, this doesn't go back to Hugo Chavez. But I personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who had firsthand knowledge, speaking with two of Hugo Chavez's family members that in the Maduro election, when the populist uprising threatened Venezuela's totalitarian leadership, that Hugo Chavez's family members said that don't worry, that it's guaranteed that their father invested the money to build the SGO voting machine system. So in a nutshell, these systems are not what you've been told, if you've been told anything. They are connected to the internet. There is no transparency of how the voter information is processed, moved, and stored. And as a matter of fact, these companies have refused to allow any type of inspection into their code, and they always decry, it's our IP, it's IP protection. But with the declaration, I believe, with Jay Johnson, was our Secretary of Homeland Security, he declared that the national election system was national critical infrastructure. So there is, I think, reason for us to understand the code and how these machines function and how they use our votes and process votes. The voting record is able to be modified, deleted, adjusted by administrators or outside threats, and those are also explained in the user's manual. Operators can assign votes for write-in votes, blank or error ballots in large numbers. So all of these votes, they could get put into a batch file, and then the administrator of that voting or tabulation system can say, okay, there's 8,000 votes in this batch file, or there's 5,000 votes in this batch file, and they can say, well, I think, this batch will just make this go to this candidate, and they have that they have that authority in the user's manual to do that. Our team is not the only team that's working on this. There are literally hundreds of other small cyber teams that have weighed in on this. There are tons of statisticians. You'll hear from some of your Arizona citizens today, but we've been working in several states looking at these anomalies. But it's not a secret. DEF CON last year, I think the hacking teams broke in and manipulated these machines in under 2 minutes. So it can be done, it's easy, and there's very little security. So they can be hacked to manipulate votes. One of our white hat hackers discovered a malware on the server. It's called the Q-Snatch, that basically records login credentials and passwords. So if someone in Philadelphia, or someone in Maricopa County, or someone in Antrim, Michigan logged in, that malware will grab their username and password. And so you can log in. If you got access to the backside of that malware, you can log in wherever you are in the world to Maricopa County to manipulate. So there's multiple
Colonel,
ways.
Just interrupt you for a second.
Yes, sir.
So we get the point of this clear. You actually examined one of the machines, and you were actually able to see very, very clear changes in vote in the machine, correct?
Correct, in Michigan.
And it was down ballot changes. How many?
Correct. So the down ballot looks, it was for, there were changes in the election day vote on 11/3 to the recount vote on 11/6. Say, for example, the school board, one lady on the election day received 519 votes, and this was a very small precinct. And the post recount, they went from 592 to 852. The total votes went from 1068 to 1810, and the write-in vote jumped from 24 to 112. There was another proposition on a state proposal that jumped significantly from 700 votes on election day up to 1083 on the recount. So there are a lot of variabilities, and what we believe this is due to is the USB drive that was used in the election day versus the post-election recount.
Well, this proposition, when I see, I think we should give them a copy of this, make this available to them, because it shows on the day of the election, this is a proposition about the use of future revenues generated from oil and gas bonuses. And I take it it was fairly controversial. So the first vote was 774 for, 508 against. The second vote was 1083 for and 206 against. Quite a difference. Now, how did that difference come about? How do you accomplish that difference? How does the machine change from after the votes are cast? What does the machine remember other votes?
So there's a card that stores the votes, and it's run against the algorithm that's put on the USB card into the actual machine and the tabulator, and that difference was basically the tabulation algorithm.
Why? Excuse me for my ignorance, but why would you put an algorithm in if you have a vote that's 774 to 508?
That's
Why wouldn't you just look and see, was that the correct vote? Why do you put an algorithm in which is introducing an outside force to what should be an internal process?
to shift things how you like them. When you look at moving these algorithms around through the different precincts, you can achieve quite a number of aggregate ballot shifts. So this was one instance and one recount and one small.
So when
precinct.
they looked at the machine on election day, it was 774 to 508. When they looked at it again on the recount 3 days later, it was 1,083 to 206. Is that right?
Correct.
And that happens because of an algorithm, not because anybody changed their vote.
The elections clerk did write an affidavit, and they basically said that we'd followed all the procedures on election day as well as a recount, and these were the results that the election clerk.
We're also
posted
going
on
to
the
submit
recount.
this study. It's quite complicated. I fell asleep last night reading it and had dreams about internet surveillance and all kinds of things. I propose getting an expert to look it over, but it shows exactly what the colonel is saying, that these machines should not be voting machines because anybody can communicate. It's like having an open computer. Anybody can communicate with them and do whatever they want with it. So we'll submit this and this to you that shows you that that they can be changed, that they were changed, and then exactly how you can do it. Now, we know we're not saying it about any of the machines in Maricopa County, but we haven't seen the machines in Maricopa County, nor have you. This evidence is being submitted to dispute the lies that Dominion and Smartmatic are putting out, which is their machines are perfect, their machines can't be tampered with, their machines are tamper-proof. The reality is their machines are just the opposite. They're completely vulnerable. Is that right, Colonel?
And if you look up on the screen, that's exactly what. And let me see if I can. Do I need to put this at full screen, or is it a better view?
I think you need to explain it.
So this is a Spiderfoot reconnaissance tool that looked at DominionVoting.com network that was analyzed on November 3rd, and basically this shows vulnerabilities. It shows volumetric internet traffic, the raw data. It shows all of the web servers, physical coordinates, all the vulnerabilities that are associated with the server. But basically, it does show that this was connected to the internet on voting day, and the volume of traffic was significant, and the vulnerabilities there are plenty of vulnerabilities that hackers could penetrate this system.
Can you tell if some of those communications went outside the United States?
We did observe packet traffic that were going from the U.S. Now, we don't know if it was specifically Dominion traffic going, but to a server in Frankfurt.
In Frankfurt, Germany.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
And who has it?
Could Colonel Waldron, could you just take a moment and explain packet traffic, because there's probably a lot of folks who are not sure what that is.
So it's bits of information that are sent over the internet from internet protocol from one point to another.
Thank you.
And what's in Frankfurt, Germany, that would be of interest?
Well, we looked prior to the election, one of our white hat hackers, and found that there was traffic in a Seidel server. Seidel is one of the companies, and I can show you we mentioned before the interconnectedness. Not that one. The interconnectedness of these companies. So this is sort of a historical link to all the voting companies, and we got Smartmatic in the middle. It's a licensor to Dominion Voting Systems. Seidel runs election night reporting through SOE software and Clarity Elections over here. And Clarity Elections is, if you click up on a lot of the county and Secretary of State voting systems, it'll pop up as property of Clarity Elections. So it doesn't really belong to the counties. It doesn't really belong to you. It really belongs to Clarity Elections.
Just to make it simple, a Dominion machine that I go in and vote, it is susceptible to easily having that vote changed from the outside, or by them in particular.
By an authorized user or an unauthorized user.
By an authorized or unauthorized user?
Correct.
As
a
well?
Hacker. A hacker.
A hacker. So my vote is only as good as the integrity of Dominion and all the hackers that exist that can get into the Dominion machine.
Your vote is not as secure as your Venmo account.
Pardon me? Say that one more time.
Your vote is not as secure as your Venmo account.
Can you think of any reason why anyone would hire them to count votes in the United States?
I could postulate a lot of...
Or any of them good reasons?
They have a strong lobby. They work with the government. They work with state government agencies, and they've got the infrastructure to sell their services.
Can you now look at, in reference to Arizona, the analysis you did of the vote in Maricopa and Pima counties that was reported? It's the Arizona fixing the vote chart.
So we notice a difference in Arizona versus the other states. Our team mostly focused on what we call spike analysis, which were an electronic inject of a lot of votes, and where the number of votes that were injected in a specific time period exceeded the ability of the scanners to process ballots and upload. So basically, it's a signal of a potential anomaly where we would want to go in and do forensic analysis on the ballots that were processed in those batches to analyze. The way that these systems work is that you can run votes in, run votes in, run votes in, and if you get write-in ballots or error ballots, it just accumulates them into a batch file. And there may be, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 votes in this batch file, and then the administrator or the tabulator can just go, okay, I'm ready to process batch file, bloop, and they send it, and then it records those votes. In the user's manual, there's ways that it shows that the administrator can vote that batch, in a 80%, 20%, 100%, however the administrator chooses, and that basically is a tool to allow them to move votes through the system faster. So Arizona was a little bit different. It had a pretty strong rise right up at the front, the first part of voting day, whereas the other states, and I can show you those, have a gradual increase in votes. And this may have been due to the fact that Arizona allowed early counting and tabulation, so those batch files could have been dropped in right away. But this injection spike at 8:06:40 p.m., and this is adjusted from Zulu time, so this is 143,100 votes that were injected. That was in excess of what the machines could have processed. The real reason that we believe that this spike was a little bit of an anomaly. And should I show the email that was sent to the Arizona legislature?
You have the floor, sir.
Say again?
Yes.
So this was an anonymous email that was sent to all members of the Arizona legislature, and it was also sent to DOJ. This individual sent the email, wanted to remain anonymous, but had enough concern that he sent this to the criminal division of U.S. Department of Justice. He did not want to be included in the investigation, but the information that they recorded was what we would like the opportunity to investigate on your behalf, or a forensics team of your choosing. It doesn't matter to us. But it says that please be advised that Pima County Recorder, located at 240 North Stone Avenue, Tucson, Arizona, in Pima County, Arizona, and the Democratic Party added fraud votes in the initial count to the vote-by-mail totals released at 8 p.m. on November 3rd, 2020. So this coincides with what we observed in the data analytics at that spike. We weren't aware of this email until after the fact. So there were approximately 35,000 fraud votes added to each Democratic candidate's vote totals. Candidates impacted include county, state, and federal election candidates. Through the utilization of the automated ballot count machines in Pima County elections, which were not Dominion, but they had the same pretty much functionality. My understanding is that 35,000 was embedded into each Democrat vote totals. Below are the meeting notes. In a meeting I was invited to by the Democrat Party in Pima County, Arizona on September 10th, 2020, no phones or recording devices were allowed. A presentation was given, including detailed plans to embed 35,000 in a spread configured distribution to each Democrat candidate's vote totals. When I asked how in the world that will 35,000 votes be kept hidden from being discovered, it was stated that spread distribution will be embedded across the total registered voter range and will not exceed the registered vote count. And the 35,000 was determined allowable for Pima County based on our county registered vote count. It was also stated that total voter turnout versus total registered voters determine how many votes we can embed. This embedding will auto-adjust based on voter turnout. Because the embed votes are distributed sporadically, all embedded votes will not be found. If audited, because the embeds are in groups of approximately 1,000. This is so County Recorder can declare an oversight issue or error as groups of 1,000 is a normal and acceptable error. So if you believe that your one vote counts for one vote, this is Maricopa County's embed totals will be substantially higher than Pima due to embeds being calculated based on the total number of registered voters. When I asked, has this ever been tested and how do we know it works? The response was yes. This has been tested and has shown significant success in Arizona judicial retention elections since 2014. Even undetectable in post-audits, because no candidate will spend the kind of funds needed to audit and contact voters to verify votes in the full potential of total registered voters, which is more than 500,000 registered voters. This year, our Secretary of State has removed precinct-level detail for election night releases so candidates can't see precinct overvotes. This is what I have from the meeting. Just thought I'd report this. Not sure if you can do anything since I was unable to have a recording device in the meeting. Again, we hope this individual would come forward and issue this as an affidavit, but this is significant, and we also noted that the reporting numbers from Pima and Maricopa County merged election day votes with write-in votes with absentee ballots, so there's no way to, in the publicly available data, to parse those votes into the segments. And I believe we noted in a piece of information that was provided to you that Maricopa County had 1.9 million mail-in ballot requests. So, and those, there was a Maricopa County official on videotape that did say that they did not validate the signatures on the write-in ballots this year. So that's a 1.9 million vote fraud potential, even if it's 0.1% of the vote. There's a lot of room for error.
Could we just review that quickly for 1 second so we get it right?
Ladies and gentlemen, please, I know that you're passionate about this, but there are a lot of people in this world that want to hear this, and if we can't hear the witnesses over remarks, that deprives people of hearing the truth.
So what I take from your testimony, Colonel, is that 35,000 votes were embedded for each Democratic candidate in Pima County.
Correct. That is the allegation of this email.
The allegation by the gentleman who hasn't given us an affidavit.
Correct.
That they were distributed based on the voter turnout carefully so they wouldn't look suspicious.
That's correct.
And that's essentially what the Dominion, Smartmatic, that's essentially their modus operandi, right?
That's their
They don't just put
CTP.
in 10,000 votes. They put it in carefully so it's hard to detect.
They move the algorithms around to different precincts until they get the aggregate number that they want and need, and then they shift the algorithms to other precincts.
Did the Democratic candidates who got the benefit of those 35,000 false votes include Biden and Harris?
According to this email, it was all local and federal races.
So if that were true, then the result of the election is totally opposite the one that they're so anxious to certify. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Now,
and again, this
you would need
email
the
was sent to every Arizona legislature that I'm.
Now, we don't know if the gentleman is telling the truth or not.
Correct.
But would it be possible, if you had the machines in Pima County, to be able to see if there's evidence of this?
In order to do that, there would have to be a full forensic audit from the USB that drives the voting to the PCM CIA cards to the tabulators to the routers.
Well, I'm just asking, could it be done if you had the will to do it?
Yes, sir.
If you wanted to find out if the vote in Pima County were honest or not, wouldn't you do it?
Yes, sir.
And without doing it, you really have no idea.
That's correct.
And the machines used in Pima County are different, but are they that much more secure?
These systems, they all have similar vulnerabilities. Our team focused on Dominion. Our partner team focused on ES&S, and they're very similar as far as vulnerabilities.
Now, did he say anything that suggests the same thing happened in Maricopa County?
This gentleman appeared to be an IT specialist in Pima County. So he only wrote allegedly to what he observed.
And do we have any knowledge that anyone from the state of Arizona attempted to look for him?
I believe the legislators, some of the legislators did try to locate this gentleman.
Anybody from law enforcement?
Not that I'm aware of. But again, I'm not law enforcement, so I'm not sure.
But even if you can't find him, you could determine the validity of this, or maybe determine the validity of this by doing a forensic audit.
Correct.
There's an available scientific tool that would tell you, I mean, did Biden get 35,000 phony votes?
That's correct.
And it's not being utilized, as far as you know, by the state of Arizona.
Pima County, I believe the total vote total was less than a million in Pima County. So it would be possible and feasible to do a full audit, a ballot audit. And I also was informed that your state, through the Counterterrorism Information Center and the DPS here in Arizona, do have the capability to analyze and validate ballots for ink consistency. So if there were mass-produced ballots in Maricopa County, that were stuffed, your DPS, I've been informed, has the capability to analyze those ballots for paper consistency and ink consistency. So if there were mass-produced ballots, you could determine that on your own.
Excuse me, Colonel Waldron. So I think what you're saying, and I'm going to repeat this back to you, these might be pre-printed ballots to simply move through the system. Is that what you're suggesting?
There are indications, we have affidavits from Pennsylvania that there were ballots that were pre-positioned in a bobtail trailer, a tractor trailer truck, okay. And that these ballots were, the thought was that this was a cache that they could go and grab the amount of ballots they needed and take them to the specific tabulation centers. And that's an affidavit that's from our Pennsylvania work.
Colonel,
TTP is standard.
So repeat one more time the piece of information that I think people were shocked about, because it is hard to believe. Did you say that a Pima County official said that they didn't validate any of the mail-in votes?
That was Maricopa County.
Maricopa.
They didn't validate the signature. They didn't validate the signatures on the mail-in ballots.
And that's 1.9 million.
Correct.
And do we know who that is?
I would have to get the video.
Well, could you get it for us?
Oh, yes, sir.
No, you don't have to do it right now, but before the end of the hearing. That would render every one of the 1.9 million votes absolutely never checked for fraud, deceit, mistake. And if they're mail-in votes, that can't be done now. They've been separated from the envelope.
Correct.
That would indicate.
So
those are basically 1.9 million votes that are illegal votes.
Or that had the potential to be illegal votes that weren't validated. The signatures weren't validated.
But can we determine now if any of them are legal or illegal?
If the envelopes were separated from the ballots, there would be no way to tell a ballot for candidate. You could still go back and look at the envelopes to validate the signatures, but you wouldn't know what the ballot
and isn't that the reason you're supposed to have an observer when you do that?
That is part of the chain of custody procedures, I believe, in Arizona.
And when they talk about chain of custody, that's what they're talking about, right?
Correct.
Because a lot of witnesses are going to talk about that. So let's just sum up a few of the things that you also found. Tell us about the green button in Maricopa County on the machine. And there is one witness that's going to testify that all day she saw election officials constantly pressing the green button when somebody was voting.
So what that was when a voter wasn't sure, and I believe this was also linked to another witness that's going to talk about with the differences in the pins and the Sharpies, that the Maricopa Elections Division, in early voting, they specified that only use ballpoint pens for voting, and then on election day, they specified only use Sharpies. And the idea is that as the bleed through on the ballot, as the scanners would cause an error in an error ballot, by creating the error ballot, the election officials basically would slide those votes into a batch file that could be adjudicated by the election administrator or the operator. And the green button was to say, okay, there's an error, but go ahead and push cast ballot, and it punches that into an error file that can be adjudicated by the election administrator.
Now, and you examined the voter database, and your team did, right?
Say again, sir?
You examined the voter database, you and your team.
Those were actually some local Arizona folks that examined that.
So you took that from
I spoke directly
state data?
with them.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
You spoke directly to whom?
To local investigators here.
And you have here voter database discrepancies. 6,000 voters, at least, entered into database with no sex and default date of birth, and they're non-existent in LexisNexis.
Correct, and I believe there'll be a witness to discuss that later this morning.
So unless those can be discovered, those votes would have to be eliminated.
Correct, and it was explained to me that the way that happens is that you can register online for a driver's license. At the same time, you can register for voter registration. But the driver's license doesn't require the same information as the voter rolls, and so those kind of go into a queue that the Secretary of State would approve for the voter rolls over time. But there appear to be 6,000 voters that were on the voter rolls in the voter database with no sex and a default date of birth. So in other words, they entered 0101, 1900 or whatever that date was.
They also discovered over 2,000 votes that used a false address, an address of a vacant lot.
Correct.
You already told us about the 1,915, 487 mail-in votes that were not verified with regard to signature in Pima County, in Maricopa County.
Correct.
Also, in Pima and Maricopa County, Republican poll watchers were very often forced to stay outside, and unable to view the vote processing.
Correct.
Is there an estimate of the number of illegal immigrants that voted in the election? Has anyone done an estimate of that?
The American Immigration Council suggests that there are about 300,000 ineligible voters, and then one of the local newspaper reported that there were another 312,000, I believe, non-incarcerated felons and other ineligible voters.
Has any attempt been made to investigate that, to determine if they can locate a sufficient number of illegal immigrants voting illegally that would have a bearing on the outcome of the election?
That would really be done by the county election fixers.
But it hasn't been done.
Not that
and they're going to certify the vote apparently without doing it.
I'm not aware if they.
It would be. You'd have to be an idiot not to think that illegal immigrants voted, right?
It's very possible.
How many are there in Arizona, approximately? Anybody's guess, but what's the lowest number? Can anybody help me with that?
Question for the local legislatures.
5 million? 4 million?
I wish we knew, sir.
Pardon me?
I wish we knew.
Mr. Chairman.
What's the lowest number we could use? 4 million?
Representative Cook.
Mr. Chairman, my colleague, Representative Townsend, and I have had several discussions over the past few weeks about that number, and she could provide that to Mr. Giuliani.
We are a commitment-based purchase website, meaning that when you purchase something from our website, you are making a commitment to give away these brochures, give away and put on bumper stickers, put up the yard sign, or hang the flag. Our vision is to bring public awareness to organized pedophile rings. Our mission is to turn prey into predators, and our values is righteousness, bringing the light into the darkness, integrity, stay consistent, and endurance, never quitting. We also recommend to subscribe to other channels like Ryan Dawson, Sean Atwood, for more information around organized pedophile blackmail rings. Thanks so much. Please subscribe and have a great day, everyone.